Hello everyone. Today I'll just give some quick commentary on this recent custom evolution clear of Caladrius Blaze. So essentially what I'm doing here is I'm playing the evolution mode, and I'm using custom shot types, which actually makes the game pretty simple as far as like getting a basic clear. But I wanted to kind of show my clear with this setup just to kind of illustrate that shmups don't have to necessarily be, a difficult endeavor. You can kind of tailor the gameplay to your liking, and I think this game is a really great example of that. So just a little bit about the game itself. This is a vertical shmup that came out, I think, around the early 2010s, made by Moss. Which was, and I think in some iteration, the creator of the Raiden games. And so this game has a couple of modes, was originally released on console and Xbox, I believe, and then was ported to arcade on, I think, the Sega Ring Edge system, and then was also reported as Caladrius Blaze to modern consoles. So I'm playing the Steam version here, which is kind of crappy, but it was easy to capture, so that's why I have that. But it's also available on the Switch, PS4, etc. The cool thing about this game is that there are lots of playable characters. You kind of saw on the stage select screen, or the character select screen, that you have that. And after you play the game for a while and kind of like play through the game with each of the characters, you also have the opportunity to customize what kind of special, they call them element shots, your character can use. So to explain the element shots a little bit, you have 3 of them. One of them usually functions as sort of a damage or straightforward damage shot, something like a laser, etc. Another one is kind of classified as like a utility shot, which it kind of differs depending on the character, but they are the most unique and kind of fun mechanically. And then there's the third element shot, which is kind of a shielding shot. So one fun thing is that you can customize them to have multiple of one type of shot if you so wanted, and in this sense it makes the game a lot easier because you have double the resources to kind of shield yourself from bullets. So you can see here that I'm using kind of a blue element shot 3, which I believe is Sophia, the character Sophia's, and also Kay's element shot 3, to basically be able to wipe the screen to bullets anytime I want. It feels a little cheesy to do it after you kind of play the game a lot and you know how to dodge a lot of the patterns normally, but starting out, it's actually really cool. You can see here, I was wiping away some of the bullets just to get myself oriented. And that's really what a lot of using element shot 3 is. You can see I have the blue one also, or that I showed off there, where you use them to reposition by canceling bullets and kind of get in a better position and then be able to dodge. Because as you see on the bottom, these shots, take resources that depend on the percentage meter that you have there. So that's enough about the game. This is the first boss, really nothing too bad. You can see here that I'm in relative safety because of all of my element shots or my defensive element shots and my ability to just, wipe away all the bullets. So you can see there, it was really no problem. So the character that I'm playing is Layis, and, well, one thing I should say is that all the characters are relatively interchangeable if you customize your shot types, but they do have default loadouts, which make the characters play a lot more unique between one another, and that's that's a pretty cool part of the game. But for now, I'm going with the custom layout and playing the character as Layis. The only reason I play her is because her main shot, the rapid shot, is actually really, really strong. It's probably overpowered. So you can see here, it just kind of wipes the screen and it tilts from left to right, kind of like a B-type in Donanpachi. And so that's really the only reason I play as her. I'm also using her element shot 1, which is like this point-blank spear attack, which is just really powerful. And that's just because I find it fun to use, point-blanking enemies. Getting into position with Sophia's element shot 3, the blue aura, and then you can see there, just spearing all the big grounded enemies. So this game has, in the evolution mode, it actually has 7 stages and 2 kind of extra stages. That might sound like a lot, but the stages are relatively short, and On the normal difficulty, they're not super threatening if you kind of know where things are coming from and you use your defensive element shots well. You can see here that I'm not really doing much dodging. I'm essentially absorbing the bullets and spearing that little large enemy there. So there are 7 stages, and there's also 2 extra stages, which are basically just these extra missions that are really short, kind of objective-based, so like, oh, like destroy all the enemies, the greater the percentage, the better your rewards, that sort of thing. So you're kind of incentivized, or you really want to do those because they give you extra bombs, and if you're really good at them, and can get 100%, they also give you extra lives. So in that sense, although it might sound like a really long game, the runtime is basically 35 minutes anyway, so which is pretty standard for a shmup. So yeah, don't let that put you off. The way extends work in this game is you can see on the bottom there are these like Christmas light looking things, the orange little bulbs. And once you get that completely full, you actually get an extend item that appears on the screen, and you have to grab it to get an extra extend. Also, this game has a bomb pool system, so essentially every time you die, you get 1 bomb added to your total. You don't lose any bombs upon death, which is actually really cool. So this is the second boss. You can see that my boss strategies will be pretty much the same throughout the entire game. With using this really strong spear attack, and just using my element shot 3 to kind of get right close and personal is really strong. So there I took a hit. That was kind of a weird death because I wasn't really expecting that shot to kind of trail on the screen and kill me, but you know, it's okay, it happens. One thing about Sophia's element shot 3 that's really kind of overpowered is that it absorbs, do you see how it's absorbing those orange spheres that are floating across the screen? Most characters' defensive shot or defensive element shot don't cancel those types of bullets, but for some reason Sophia's do, or Sophia's element shot does. So essentially, it's just a better, like overall better defensive element shot. Which, you know, when you're using a custom loadout and you basically get to choose the strongest options, of course the game is going to get a little bit easier. That's essentially what I'm doing here. I'm not really commenting on the shame break, you know, whatever imagery that is presented with the game. I mean, that sort of thing, depending on whether or not it's your thing, like, it could be cool for a bit, but I don't know, my opinion is that the more you play the game, the more it kind of just gets in the way of the meat and potatoes of the game, you know, rather than be enticing all the way through. But that's just my opinion. Anyway, I won't talk any more about that. Here's one of the extra missions. You can see here that the goal is basically to kill all the enemies that are on the screen. Given the right, you know, and given that you anticipate the waves and can kind of choose your element shots and apply them correctly, you can definitely get a 100%, probably even without a bomb, if you use, like, you know, some tricks like evolution mode, etc. Evolution mode is basically that if you have 50% at least of all your element shots, you can go into a power-up mode where your shots become stronger temporarily, and then once that runs out, you kind of have that disabled for a bit. So using that special mode, you can definitely get 100%. I just haven't really practiced this stage that much. With a very simple strategy of just staying alive, because you can die when you play these stages, and destroying as many things as I can, you can get at least 1 bomb, or actually I think you can definitely get 1 bomb extra by playing this stage. And also some additional ether chips is what they call it. So that Christmas light thing that I talked about that gives you extends, you can get a couple chips that go towards getting an additional extend. So that's really why you want to be playing these extra stages. I believe that the extra stages are not in the original Caladrius on the Xbox, but they added it for the arcade release. And I think that it kind of makes the game easier because you have more resources to fight the later stages of the game. But it's just fun in general also, so I mean, you know, it's nice to have like the stages interspersed with some of these external stages, because it's kind of like a break and it's kind of fun just to try and get as high of a percentage block rate, for instance, as you can see on the bottom of the screen, as possible. So we're going into stage 3 here. Oh, I should remark on this. So after each stage, you can also kind of increase the power of your element shots. And as you might expect, that makes them more powerful. There is some like meta decision making, especially if you go with default loadouts for some characters, because you know with some characters, or actually most characters have like good element shots and they have not so great element shots, so that it makes sense to prioritize the ones that are really good. But when you're kind of cheesing it with a custom loadout, then all of your element shots are hopefully going to be good because you chose them that way. So then the decision making is a lot less nuanced. It's more like, okay, I'm just going to fill them all evenly, or at least that's what I was thinking during this very basic clear. You can see how this game would look very dense and kind of difficult if I didn't have like at least one of the element shots, or at least one of the defensive element shots. And yeah, I think that would be pretty accurate in saying. Of course, everyone has a defensive element shot, but it's not always as good as Sophia's or Kay's. Kay's is like the Ghostbuster green laser thing that wipes bullets away. So you can see how the game's difficulty actually differs depending on what character you play. I think that probably the game is hardest with some of the default or starting characters like Alex and probably Kay. Just because, like, I guess they were the first characters and kind of what the game's difficulty was initially balanced around. And then they added characters like Layis and Caladrius, etc., which are, you know, just a little bit stronger. Like, or maybe not just a little bit, but you can tell just playing them that, wow, their shots do more damage, they're a little bit faster, you know, their element shot 3 absorbs special bullets, you know, that sort of thing. Not to say that you should feel pressure to play one character or another. You can see here I'm playing Layis just because I like her main shot and the spear attack is really cool. I'm just more saying it as a point towards the game is very dynamic depending on who you choose and kind of how you go about playing the game, whether or not you choose a default loadout or custom loadout, etc. You can see more of the green Ghostbuster laser kind of wiping away the bullets in this stage, which is always really fun. And it feels really good to do as well. There's a little bit of a learning curve, like, because you have to aim the Ghostbuster laser with, like, you know, your ship's movement, and sometimes, of course, you can just veer into a bullet because you were too focused on kind of wiping away bullets in front of you. But, you know, for the most part, once you get the hang of it, it's really cool. It's really fun to use that laser. So this is the stage 3 boss. Nothing too unusual about it. To be honest with you, the loadout that I'm using here, really you don't have to dodge any boss patterns at all. You can see here I'm not dodging anything. I'm literally just going through them and using my spear attack up close to speed kill all the different phases. Yeah, it's kind of a pretty broken strategy. Here you can see the Ghostbuster laser. No dodging required, you just kind of wipe it away. And if you look at like how much meter it's using, it's actually not using that much. I could get through the entire pattern with no problem. And then I can get up here and point blank the boss. So you can see there that I was using a really funny technique. Oh, well, one thing that I should say first is, you can see that you can die during the shame breaks. So I would recommend turning them off. I left them on for the purpose of recording this video because, you know, that's something that I'm sure people like for the first time, especially when they don't know much about this game. But fair warning for people actually playing it is that, yeah, you can totally die during that cut-in break where, you know, the screen dims and there's a giant picture on the screen where you get distracted, right? I would recommend turning that off. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents. But anyway, what I was saying before is you saw that towards the end of that boss fight that I was using a really funny strategy that I'm sure people have discovered it before. I never read anything like that, but I just kind of was fooling around, and I found that if you hold down the spear button and you tap the element shot button, actually it makes it so your spear launches, even though it's like just refilling like at 1%, your spear comes out anyway. So basically it's like canceling the animation time of the spear and having it come out again and again, essentially increasing its rate at which it deploys. And that's kind of broken because, you know, like the spear is very powerful. It does a lot of damage point blank, and that really allows you to nail the bosses and skip entire phases. It works. It not only works with the Sophia's Element Shot 3, like alternating between the spear and the blue aura, but I tried it on Layis' default Element Shot 3 for defensive Element Shot, and it also works there. So it might just be a strategy with the character, but it's actually really funny and kind of cheesy. But you know, I like abusing it, and you'll see it again in stage 4, I believe. This is the quote-unquote external stage. It's stage, well, it's the stage in between 3 and 4. And the story is that in between the arcade release and the release of Caladrius Blaze, they actually added this additional stage. So that's why the arcade version has one less stage than the evolution mode, which I'm playing right now, which is exclusive to the new port. And so, I don't know, I think the music's really fun in this stage, it's really good. As far as the question of whether or not one should play the arcade release versus the evolution mode, because the arcade mode is also included in the Caladrius Blaze port, I would say it's better to play evolution. Because the evolution power-up mode, where you kind of become super powerful and all your shot types are really high levels, that sort of thing, that's an exclusive power-up to the evolution mode. I believe in arcade, it's just you do a very powerful attack, like a bomb. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure it's something to that effect. So I think that the evolution power-up is super cool, and definitely something that would make picking evolution mode really appealing. The second thing I would say is that playing this extra stage might seem bad from a survival standpoint, because you have to survive through an extra stage, but there's a lot of ether chips in this stage, and that allows you to get more extends throughout the course of the game, of course. Probably amounts to 1 additional extend, and that's kind of important also, because with additional extends you get more bombs, which you can use to skip really hard boss fights that you'll see later. And because this stage isn't particularly difficult, especially with this OP setup, you know, it's worthwhile to do it. At least that's what I was finding from playing this game for a little bit. So here's this external stage boss. I haven't really talked too much about the lore because, you know, the localization isn't the greatest. There's a lot of grammar mistakes, and it's kind of hard to tell what's going on sometimes. Also, the font is horrible, but, you know, essentially, I think this boss is a family member of one of the other characters you get to play. So the dialogue isn't super interesting, at least for fighting this character, but I think if you play as this character, the boss's sister, the dialogue probably is a bit more interesting. But I skip all of it anyway. Would be interesting to learn more about the lore at some point, but yeah. So here, with the Ghostbuster laser, again, this part is really simple. He's going to do the rock thing one more time, and he's going to come in, and then I'm just going to point blank the crap out of it, using that really ridiculous strategy. You saw, it was me just holding the spear button and mashing Sophia's Element Shot 3, the blue aura, and that basically allowed me to spam the spears. And there I just used a final bomb to kill it. So you can only have 9 bombs total throughout this game. And if you're doing everything correctly, chances are you can hit the cap somewhere, like maybe through the midpoint, maybe a little bit later. So yeah, I think you have a lot of bombs, and you're incentivized to use them, excuse me. So yeah, I just used the bomb there to skip that last phase. I think probably skipping boss phases is the most useful application of the bombs in this game. Okay, so we're going into stage 4. This stage has probably the only instance, or one of the only instances of like stage hazards, which I'll point out in a second. And that's kind of one thing that I forgot to mention when playing this game. I really like its general dynamic of applying the element shots to interact with and kill the enemies and dodge the bullets. But I think the game has struggles a little bit with collision hitboxes. So like these, you see these metal plates, those are hitboxes that you want to avoid, or else you're going to get killed by them. And for the most part, they're static, so the stage obstacles are okay. But due to the fact that there's a wider aspect ratio for like a vertical game, and you're kind of relatively slow, I guess all things considered. Um, Sometimes enemies, which move quite a bit faster than you, especially depending on the enemy type, just ram into you, and it's really difficult to see that happen or to anticipate that happen sometimes. And because you're so slow, it also is difficult to avoid, at least when you're starting out. I'm sure that this gets easier the more you learn the game, but I'm just saying that one thing that probably you can expect when starting is that enemies are going to run into you and you're going to get sniped and killed because of it. Yeah, so that's just something that I wanted to point out, because I think that relates to some of my growing pains with playing this game, is that the aspect ratio and the small character sprite combined with the fast-moving ships. Like, do you see that? Like, I could have easily collided with one of those enemies there, and they're pretty fast, and I'm not that fast, so that's kind of what I'm talking about. It didn't happen here, thankfully, but sometimes, sometimes I don't anticipate it, and I can't get out of the way in time, and I die. So, just one thing to consider. I'm not going to dwell on that too much, because it's, it's something that we all have to deal with at some point. Okay, so here's the stage 4 boss, and you're going to see me do the point-blank spear spam strategy as well. Okay, I finally gave it a name, the spear spamming strategy. But it helps get through the first phase of this boss. You can see there. I'm just spamming the spears. You can hear like the voice clip, which is how you know that it's working. In addition to obviously the effect of the spear being on the screen. So fun fact is that the character that I'm fighting is actually myself, or it's actually Islay, which is Layis' real name. It's just a what is it called? A rearrangement of the letters of her name. There's a specific word for it, but it's just escaping me. And I guess the lore is that you kind of split off into two people or something, and you have to fight yourself essentially, and one of them is really loyal to the king, and the other one is trying to show the king the error of his ways. I don't know. That's all I could glean from really playing as this character. But, it's kind of interesting to fight yourself in any sort of game. This is no exception. Alright, so more or less finished with stage 4. So I believe now we are going to go into the second mission stage, and we'll where it's basically like the first mission stage where you have to kind of kill specific enemies. And then there'll be stage 5 and stage 6. We'll round out the run. Right. So sorry that I pause here. I'm trying to skip the dialogue, and there's some dialogue that you skip by holding start, and other dialogue that you have to hit the confirm button or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, it's kind of annoying, but I always pause there by accident. So I think that these mission stages, I've talked a lot already about how it's probably better to do them, or that I was trying to convince you that, hey, they're actually not that bad. They actually are very helpful, which was really just to address some of the reservations I had with playing this game initially, thinking, oh, there are more opportunities for me to die because I have to play more stages. And I really believe that there are lots of benefits in playing these extra stages, which I've already talked about. But one thing that's a bit scary is sometimes there's a lot of stuff going on the screen in these stages, and you're going to be really focused on killing the enemies that you need to kill in order to, gain points towards whatever mission you're trying to fulfill, which is to kill these enemies. And sometimes you can be distracted, and you can die in these stages. So just try to strike a balance between doing as well as you can, if not getting 100%, and also not dying, because I think that probably dying in this stage is worse than not getting an extra bomb, right? At least that's my opinion. So just be aware. You can die in this stage. Sometimes it gets a little hectic, and you want to at least be able to carry that extend into the next stage. You don't want to lose any lives in these extra stages. A fun thing is that if you no-miss a stage, you get a little sexy CGI image. You know, they really went all out with some of the you know, themes in this game, which I can see as being like a good advertising tactic, especially if this game was popular in the arcades. I could imagine there's a reason why, you know, sexy mahjong games were really popular for a time in the arcades. Anyway, this is stage 5, so this is a really cool stage. I think it's my favorite. It involves like kind of you flying through these dark skies, going into the castle where the king resides, and then fighting the king underground at the very end, which overall is just really cool. I think the production values in this game are pretty surprisingly high. At least I was very surprised, because I guess, you know, I'm kind of spoiled when it comes to playing shmups, because, you know, a lot of the games I play are really high quality just because, you know, they're the very famous ones by famous developers, etc. And so, like, in comparison, I never really know what to expect as far as production values for games, or for other shmups, or for horizontal shmups, for instance, etc. And even though Moss has a very, like, you know, good reputation, I was still impressed with, I guess, the production values of this game. Everything from the music to the 3D models and the stage design to the fact that there's like 8 characters or something ridiculous like that with 3 element shots each. Like, that's a lot of content for a game like this. And yeah, I think I've said this before, but I think that's one of this game's huge strengths. It's just that you can play it for a long time and it can still feel fresh just by trying some new things. I didn't really talk about scoring at all in this game, so maybe I'll just touch on it very briefly. Essentially, you want to build a multiplier on the bottom left of your screen by killing enemies with your element shots and not your main shot. And that kind of just is a base multiplier that then gives you higher scores as you continue. There are also like little scoring tricks, like there are these little towers throughout the game where you can stand on top of them for a bit and they grow and then you blow them up and they give you extra score, things like that. But that's like a, you know, very simple, very simple explanation of the scoring system, which is just my understanding of it. I haven't really done much scoring in this game yet. You can see here now that we're inside the castle, making our way to fight the king. The music in this stage is really cool. Another thing about the stage is that, oh, there's the throne. Another thing about the stage is that this is where the spear kind of really shines, because there's a lot of grounded enemies that kind of are large and have quite a bit of HP, and also these flying enemies. But the spear kills them in just one hit each, or like one spear thrust each, which is just really good. Just really good. Like, that neutralizes the threat almost immediately. You don't have to do any real dodges. Now we're underground, the last part of stage 5. So hopefully I'll get one more element chip, or one more extend through the ether chip system before the end of this run. But I have 8 bombs. I think we're in a pretty good spot right now. You can basically bomb spam the boss here, and then the last boss. Which is essentially what you'll see here after I use my point-blank strategy. Here you can also see a really ridiculously good thing about Sophia's Element Shot 3. So you see those black and silver balls that are being shot out by the boss? Only her element shot can actually neutralize those. I don't think anyone else's can. So basically it trivializes that whole first pattern because you have that element shot, which is just, you know, one of the additional reasons why that's so, like, so broken, probably. You can see there that I took a death, unfortunately. The issue was really just that, one, I was using the Ghostbuster beam, and one of the shots stuck through. So that was my fault. And I used an extra bomb there, which I probably shouldn't have done, but it's okay. Okay, Okay, so we're gonna go into the final stage here. And we're already completely full on all of our shot types, shot levels, so that's really good. Another reason to do the external stage and the missions for sure. This final stage is like riddled with these really annoying little snipers that continuously spawn. So you can destroy them, but they'll just come right back. And they're really annoying and hound you throughout the entire stage. One of the reasons why I took Sophia's Element Shot 3 is because of these guys, because like a lot of the other things that I was explaining, Sophia's Element Shot 3, I believe, is one of the only element shots that can neutralize those blue spears, which is just, you know, ridiculously good, right? So it makes this stage a lot easier in my opinion. I know a lot of people would say too easy, but you know, I still died there, so not too easy for me. I have no shame in picking the most powerful shot, especially since you can customize your shot types in the arcade version, which I find kind of ridiculous, but you know, just because you have like the winning strategy or, you know, a really strong strategy doesn't mean you can apply it in the grand scheme of things, so I'm not too worried about that. Anyway, you can see that little silver pyramid to the left of middle left of the screen there. That's one of the soul towers, but because of these, you know, blue enemies hounding me, I kind of didn't want to go for it. Yeah, I kind of don't want to die again. I only have one extend left, but I have 7 bombs, so this boss is as good as dead. It's more than enough to just bomb spam it to death. The build-up to fighting Beelzebub, which is the last character, is, you know, kind of long. When you're dodging these blue shots the entire time, you actually don't get a full 100% refill of your element shots when starting this boss, which is, like, in contrast with all of the other bosses, which is kind of interesting. But they give you that small period of time to kind of recharge your element shots while avoiding the blue snipers, so I guess there's that. Okay, same strategy of using the spear, using the bomb, and just spamming the element shot 3 to absorb all the bullets. We're gonna use another bomb. Playing it nice and safe. This last attack has summons like walls that are like unblockable or like they have collision hitboxes and you can't neutralize them. So I'm just kind of making sure to avoid them there. But you know, with that many bombs, it's really simple. You don't really have to dodge anything. And yeah, I mean that's basically the clear. I see my thumbnail now. But anyway, yeah, there's not really much more to it. It's really just in my mind a showcase for how, you know, how approachable this game is, and also how cool it can be while being a fair challenge when you're first starting out. And there's a lot of depth with the game as well, and of course there's lots of lore and endings for each character, full voice acting, things like that. It's just a great package, and I don't hear this game talked about too much anymore, I guess because it's quite late after it came out. But yeah, just discovering it and kind of finally trying my hand at it, I really want to echo that it's a really, you know, it's a really good game, and I'm look forward to learning more about it myself, and I really encourage you, if you're still watching, to you know, give it a try yourself. It's really cheap on GOG. It's like $4, I believe, on sale regularly. The Steam version is kind of not great. It's capped at 720p and has some crashing issues sometimes. I actually have to play it in windowed mode, otherwise it just crashes. But like I said, it's available on PS4, PS3, Switch, etc. So there's a lot of options to choose from. It's relatively accessible. So that's all that I have to say. Thanks for watching.